Hello my people, and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be taking a look at the incredible shrinking man. A guy living life, then out of the blue, he begins to shrink. Are you ready? Then let's begin. The movie opens with Scott and his wife Louise lounging on their boat. Scott must be doing pretty well for himself because the boat is kind of sizable for that time. Alrighty, he giving the wife a side eye and a little kiss on her cheek. Now Scott is topside alone when he sees something approaching. It's a fog. He stands there and it envelops him. The fog and some type of silver stuff is getting all over his body. Then some strange stuff starts happening with Scott. He appears to be getting smaller, not just losing weight, but getting smaller. He goes to the doctor, and the doctor gets a group of scientists involved. They run him through all types of tests, drugs, x-ray, shots. Louise is, being that dutiful wife, being with him and giving him encouragement, but they can't figure out what the deal is. But one thing they do know, that fog was the result of experimental pesticides and radiation. And this is what's causing the problem for him. Yet, there they are, standing together in this thing. And Louise keeping things running as normal as possible for them both. Yet, here it is another day, and he's smaller. Look at him sitting beside Louise on this couch. He's much smaller. And the tests continue. Louise assures Scott, we're in this together. We've got rings on our fingers. And with each ensuing day, he's getting smaller and smaller. Look at him. Look at the clothes he's wearing. Those little kid clothes. And he's just writing away with a vengeance in his journal. He's been let go from his job, and so his life has radically changed. We see him alone with the cat, still getting smaller and further away from the people in his life. Yet something's going to change because the circus is in town. Scott strikes a friendship up with Clarice. Finally, a person who's not just simply on his size, his stature, but a person who's actually shorter than he is. They become close friends, and over time, Scott starts to meet with her. They meet in the park, and he gives her his journal to read. All his thoughts and all his feelings and everything he's going through. He's stuck in the house because the press is following him literally everywhere he goes. He's a prisoner. He's trapped in the shrinking body, but also in a shrinking world. But for Clarice, we all need someone who gets us, who understands us, who's like us. And he finds that in Clarice in a way he cannot find in his own wife. But it's short-lived. When they both stand up, he realizes that he is now much shorter than Clarice. Alone again. More doctors, more tests, getting smaller and smaller with each ensuing day. Yes, they're trying to give him hope, but he's shrinking. He literally cannot be the husband to his wife that he once was. Look at me, he seems to be saying. I'm smaller than a kid. And you are married to this? Come on, y'all. Where's the affection and the intimacy between a husband and a wife in the middle of all this? There's a newspaper saying the incredible shrinking man is still shrinking, and so is his marriage. And so now we see Louise leaning more and more on Charlie, But here Charlie's talking to the nurse. He's getting more and more involved in this. Sure, he's their good best friend, but he's not talking to Scott, you see. He's talking to Louise. And she's leaning on him more and more for support. Now we find Scott living in a dollhouse wearing makeshift clothes. As you can see, noise is amplified and vibrations literally rock the place. Can you imagine what this relationship between husband and wife has become? He's upset and frustrated. He comes out swinging. And really, can you blame him? This guy's manhood is all but shot. And sister girl, she's walking on eggshells in her own home. Now they're going through this back and forth. He's questioning her. Where are you going? When are you coming back? And she tells him she's going to walk down to the corner store. She'll be right back. And she reminds him that he has a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Still hanging out with the doctors. Still holding out hope against hope. So as she's leaving, she looks back. She's forgetting her list. Notice she left the door open. The wind is blowing pretty hard, and it's blown the door open wider. And here enters the cat, which she literally doesn't even know it. Now we have Scott, and he's feeling pretty bad about giving Louise such a hard time. He's saying to himself that he's getting smaller and smaller every day, and he's becoming more and more tyrannical and domineering concerning Louise. He questions how she's lived with him through the past weeks. Dude, that chick loves you. That's how she's done it. He picks up the knife and then tosses it down, saying, maybe tomorrow they'll find the cure. See, he still has a sliver of hope. And just so long as you have a sliver of hope, maybe something can change. Maybe, brother man, but you gonna have to survive this cat, because Fido is in the house. And look, he hears something. It's the cat, sniffing around. Even though he doesn't know what that noise is, brother man getting a knife. I think you still all right, Scott. You still a man. You a little bitty man, but you still a man. Uh-oh, here we go. Now you see the cat and it sees you. Now he has a problem because Louise isn't home and he is trapped, literally trapped in that house with a monster. I'm not trying to dog out little Fido, but I'm simply saying to Scott, this thing is a monster. Louise isn't there, so he can't call for help. So he's going to have to handle this all by his little bitty lonesome. So while the cat isn't looking, he runs out of the dollhouse and he's hiding behind the leg of the sofa. He's keeping an eye on the cat as he runs across the room. The cat sees him and swipes at him and knocks him down. And now begins the proverbial cat and mouse or cat and little bitty guy saga. Because Scott is going to have to figure out a way to get out of this. And the cat is right on him. There's no place for him to run and hide. Yet he looks up. So he's going to go for it. He's going to pull down the lamp. It has the desired effect. It scares the cat. And it gives Scott a chance to run away. He's running for the basement. Okay, Now he's at the basement door and he looks down the stairs and he said, okay, this is quite the Mount Everest. But he really doesn't have a choice because the cat is there. And so he's trying to shut the door and the cat is trying to get in there at him. Louise comes home, and between the wind coming in the house and the cat pushing against the basement door, Scott is knocked down and he lands on top of a pile of clothes. Now Louise sees the room all in a disarray and no Scott. She goes over to where the lamp is on the floor. She finds a piece of cloth that has blood on it. She looks, sees the cat running by, and surmises that it has eaten up Scott. Now Scott's basement adventure begins. He finds water, a home, yet something else, a spider. Knowing he's going to need a weapon eventually, he finds some sewing things and a straight pen. He takes it, rubs it against the concrete floor to sharpen it. He notices a window, and so, using some thread as a rope, he climbs up. The open window area is covered by a grate, and he can't get out. So he's trapped down in that basement with a spider that is a monster. I'm not kidding, y'all. That thing is straight up scary. So he's sleeping in his matchbox with his straight pen weapon close by when he is awakened by water falling inside of his makeshift home. He exits, he takes a look around, and he sees water dripping. Now the matchbox is under the water tank, and so the little bitty drips become a raging waterfall that literally knocks him off his feet. He is in a raging river. He's doing everything he can do. He's trying to swim. He passes by a floating pencil. He tries to hold on to that. He is just being tossed around in this raging water. And remember, this really isn't a raging water. It's just a flooding basement because the water tank has gone out. Yet, here he is struggling for his life. He is trying to hold on to anything that he can possibly hold on to. It is like this planet is trying to take him out. And there we have the ever-present Charlie. And I really don't have a problem with him. We all need a Charlie in our lives. This guy's really his last hope. If he's going to get out of the spot he's in, Louise or Charlie is going to have to see him. Because if these two people go back upstairs, there is absolutely no way for him to get out of this. He is stuck in this basement, and he may as well be on another planet in a galaxy far, far away. Just saying. And you ask yourself, how much worse can it get? How much more can this guy take? You ask yourself that. And yet, he's trying to get somebody's attention. Not only is he very, very tiny, it seems as if he's literally invisible. It has come to this. It has come to the point where even though he is extremely, extremely little, he's invisible. His wife doesn't see him. His best friend doesn't see him. Yet there he is, literally drowning in front of everybody. Now that he's cleared the drain, Charlie's attention turns to why he was headed downstairs in the first place, and that was to get Louise's trunk. She's leaving. She's leaving tonight. Her happy little home has become a nightmare and she is done. She's leaving one place to begin again somewhere else. Now Scott is waking up. The raging water has receded. He's wet and cold, and holy camole, he is stuck in this basement with that blasted spider. Now he looks up and he sees like a hunk of bread. But as you can see, that hunk of bread has a spider web attached to it. It's the spider's hunk of bread. So you have the potentiality for food, but you're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to fight for your life. You're going to have to fight for survival. Ooh, this thing looks awful. Okay, between squinting eyes, Scott is all in. He is seriously fighting for survival, and he prevails.
This was the prize I had won.
He had won. He'd won the food, and he'd won the battle against his adversary, that spider in the basement. But maybe he'd won much more than just that.
But even as I touched the dry, flaking crumbs of nourishment, it was as if my body had ceased to exist. There was
You know
no
how
hunger.
you can get so messed up, you can't even eat, you don't even have an appetite? That's where he's
No longer
at.
the terrible fear of shrinking. Again, I had the sensation of instinct, of each movement, each thought tuned to some great directing force.
And it is compelling him, this force he's talking about is compelling him to move forward, to move upward, to move toward where that opening is in that window spaced area. Now he's waking up. And look at his clothes.
I was continuing to shrink. To become
Practically to his
what?
feet.
The infinitesimal. What was I? Still a human being? Or was I the man of the future? So close. The infinitesimal and the infinite. But suddenly I knew they were really the two ends of the same concept. The unbelievably small and the unbelievably vast eventually meet, like the closing of a gigantic circle. I looked up, as if somehow I would grasp the heavens, the universe, worlds beyond number, God's silver tapestry spread across the night. And in that moment I knew the answer to the riddle of the infinite. I had thought in terms of man's own limited dimension. I had presumed upon nature that existence begins and ends is man's conception, not nature's. And I felt my body dwindling, melting, becoming nothing. My fears melted away, and in their place came acceptance. All this vast majesty of creation, it had to mean something. And then I meant something too. Yes, smaller than the smallest. I meant something too. To God, there is no zero. I still exist.
And there you have it, my people. I saw this movie and I was a teenager. And, you're talking about being a teenager in the 60s, the 70s, with what was going on in the world at that time. I didn't have a lot of angst. I had the angst of the period, but nothing like now. And when I say nothing like now, what I'm talking about is I'm 40 years down the road from that. 40. I'm pushing late 60s real hard. And so seeing that movie then and seeing the movie now resonates differently. How do you mean? What do you mean? I'm saying this. There's been a road walked from that time back then to this time right now. That road held grief and misunderstanding and questioning and all the challenging things of life. Like this shrinking guy who could not do anything about it, who had no control, and all the people that were supposed to help him, the medical field, the science field, nobody could help him. All the people that were supposed to be in his life to support him, for the most part, they love him. He got let go from his job. Any buddies he had there, that disappeared. He probably had friends in addition to just Charlie. They disappeared. After a while, what it was to him to be this married guy, to be the breadwinner. Come on, y'all, because we talking about the late 50s. Wife didn't go to work. She stayed home, took care of the house, took care of you, took care of the cat. He took care of everything. That is what defined him as a man. Him going out and working. Him going out and being the provider. Him going out and being the protector. But when that role flipped on him, it wasn't just he was shrinking physically, but he was shrinking mentally. He was shrinking psychologically. He could no longer hold on to the definition of what he was. And at the end of the day, he went through this long, involved, and painful journey to come out on the other end. And coming out on the other end, the realization for him on the other end was none of these titles mattered. None of them mattered. Because at the end of the day, the only title that actually mattered when he went through all this hot mess of a stuff, the only title that mattered to him at the end was a human being. That was it. His humanity. Not employee, not friend, not husband, not patient, but his humanity. And at the end of the day, that's the different story for me. Back then as a teenager, this was a great story. With, at that time, some pretty good special effects. Guy shrinking. I didn't expect the ending. In real life, I expected them to find a cure, fix him up, and, happy endings all around. But guess what? Life isn't about necessarily happy endings. Life is about lessons and learning and dealing with and making your peace with something. And at the end of the day, Scott had to make his peace with the fact that he wasn't going to get fixed. He had to make his peace with the fact that he was going to walk that last mile of his life all by his lonesome. He had to make the peace with himself that his journey was going to lead to a path that he hadn't even planned for himself. That he was going to shrink and shrink and shrink to the most minutest level of his own being. The atomic level of his own being. And you know what, peeps? At the end of the day, he had to make his peace with it and he had to accept it. And that is when and where he found his true humanity. That's where he found his true humanity. All right, my peeps, I run down the road long enough, did a little venting. But, I just want you guys to look at these movies and see the story of it. Not just, entertainment, good, great. But some of these movies, they have a story. And the real good movies have a lesson. All right, enough for now. I'll see you later.